בשנתיים האחרונות הייתי שותף לצוות חוקרים ב-INSS שבחן את מערכת היחסים הזאת מנקודת מבט של ביטחון לאומי. המחקר נערך כאמור בשותפות עם קרן משפחת רודרמן שעוסקת בחיזוק הקשרים בין הקהילות היהודיות בארצות הברית ובישראל. זה המחקר, הוא התפרסם לפני שבועות ספורים והוא נגיש לציבור הרחב גם באמצעות אתר האינטרנט של המכון. בדקות הקרובות אני אציג על קצה המזלג חלק מהממצאים, מהתובנות ומההמלצות של המחקר. מיד אחריי יעלה ויבוא לבמה פאנל בהנחייתו של השגריר שפירו שיעמיק בחלק מהנושאים מהפרספקטיבה של יהודי ארצות הברית. אני מקווה שהעיסוק בנושא במסגרת הכנס יעורר כאמור סקרנות ועניין להעמיק בסוגיה בהמשך בקרב הקהל היקר שנמצא כאן וציבור העוקבים אחר הכנס. אני רוצה להתחיל בהתייחסות לשאלה מדוע מדובר בכלל בסוגיית ביטחון לאומי ולספק שתי תשובות. ראשית, בראייה אינסטרומנטלית, ליהדות ארצות הברית הייתה תרומה מכרעת בהקמת ישראל והיא ממשיכה לתרום להתפתחותה, לביטחונה ולחוסנה. תרומה זו מתבצעת דרך חיזוק היחסים המיוחדים בין ישראל לארצות הברית, דרך תרומה ישירה לבניין הארץ והחברה ודרך תרומה והשפעה עקיפה ברחבי העולם. מבחינה זו יהדות ארצות הברית תורמת משמעותית לכל רכיבי הביטחון הלאומי כפי שמופיעים בשקף. שנית, היחסים בין שתי הקהילות היהודיות בישראל ובארצות הברית הם כשלעצמם גורם מעצב לביטחונו ולעתידו של העם היהודי כולו. ייעודה של ישראל כמדינת הלאום של העם היהודי וצביונה כמדינה יהודית ודמוקרטית מושפעים ממערכת היחסים הזאת עם יהדות התפוצות. שאלת הייעוד והזהות שלנו, בעיקר של הדורות הבאים, הופכת להיות הסוגיה המרכזית לעתידנו ולביטחוננו כעם, כמדינה וכחברה, ואני אחזור לנקודה הזאת בסוף דבריי. לפני שאני אתייחס לשאלת היחסים בין הקהילות, אני רוצה להציג בכמה מילים את קהילת יהודי ארצות הברית. מר הרצוג יתייחס, אני אגיד בכמה מילים, אני מזהיר מראש שזאת הצגה מאוד חלקית, אבל הכרחית כבסיס להמשך. בעולם חיים כיום כ-14.5 מיליון יהודים בהתאם להגדרה ההלכתית. 85% מתוכם מתגוררים בישראל או בארצות הברית. בנוסף ל5.7 מיליון יהודים על פי ההלכה, חיים בארצות הברית כמיליון איש נוספים שמגדירים עצמם כיהודים, רובם בנים למשפחות מעורבות. הקהילה היהודית בארצות הברית היא מיעוט קטן שגודלו פחות מ2% מסך האוכלוסייה בארצות הברית, אך היא בעלת השפעה רבה על החברה האמריקאית בכל תחומי החיים. כמובן שקהילת יהודי ארצות הברית אינה עשויה מקשה אחת והמבנה הפנימי שלה שונה מזה של החברה הישראלית. כ-90% מיהודי ארצות הברית אינם אורתודוקסים ושייכים לזרמים הרפורמי והקונסרבטיבי או שאינם משתייכים לאף אחד מהזרמים הדתיים. המגמות הדמוגרפיות של הקהילה מושפעות משני מרכיבים עיקריים. האחד הוא שיעור הפריון הנמוך יחסית של יהודי ארצות הברית, למעט במגזר האורתודוקסי. השני הוא שיעור הנישואים המעורבים הגבוה של יהודים עם לא יהודים, קרוב ל-60%. מכאן שבאמת אחד האתגרים הגדולים שעומדים בפני הקהילה הזאת הוא אתגר ההמשכיות. מבחינה אידיאולוגית, יהודי ארצות הברית הם הקבוצה הליברלית ביותר בארצות הברית, והערכים הליברליים באים לידי ביטוי גם בעמדות הפוליטיות ובדפוסי ההצבעה שלהם. למעלה מ-70% מיהודי ארצות הברית תומכים באופן מסורתי במפלגה הדמוקרטית. לישראל יש מקום מרכזי כמרכיב בזהות האישית והקולקטיבית של יהודי ארצות הברית. למעלה מ-85% מיהודי ארצות הברית מגדירים את ישראל כחלק חשוב בזהותם. עם זאת, בקרב הדור הצעיר ובקרב מי שזיקתם הדתית נמוכה, יש קבוצה גדולה יחסית שאינה רואה בישראל רכיב בזהותה. וגם לזה יתייחס מר הרצוג. מכאן אני רוצה לעבור להתבוננות השוואתית קצרה על הקהילות היהודיות בישראל ובארצות הברית. שתי הקהילות נבדלות אחת מהשנייה במספר תחומים מהותיים, ותסלחו לי מראש על הכללות גסות שאני הולך לעשות. רוב יהודי ארצות הברית אינם אורתודוקסים כאמור, נוטים לתפיסות ליברליות או מתונות, ובעלי עמדות פוליטיות של מרכז שמאל. לעומתם בישראל יש ייצוג קטן מאוד באופן יחסי לזרמי היהדות הלא אורתודוקסית. החברה הישראלית שמרנית באופן יחסי לזו האמריקאית ונוטה בעמדותיה הפוליטיות למרכז ימין. פערים אלו הם גם הבסיס לרוב המחלוקות שאנחנו רואים בין ישראל ויהודי ארצות הברית. בסוגיות דת ומדינה עומדת על הפרק שאלת ההכרה של מדינת ישראל בזרמים הלא אורתודוקסיים. ב-2017 פרץ המשבר לאחר הקפאת מתווה הכותל, במקביל נמצא על הפרק חוק הגיור החדש שאמור היה להסדיר את סוגיית הגיורים הפרטיים ואת מעמד הרבנות הראשית בסוגיה. בתחום הערכי גוברת הביקורת מצד רבים מיהודי ארצות הברית ביחס למהלכי חקיקה והחלטות ממשלת ישראל שנתפסים בעיניהם כצעדים בלתי דמוקרטיים כדוגמת חוק הלאום, ובתחום הפוליטי רבים מהם מבקרים את מדיניות ישראל בנוגע לסכסוך הישראלי-פלסטיני ומצפים כי תמשיך לחתור לשלום על אף הקשיים והמורכבויות. המחקר שלנו בחן גם את הידע והתפיסות של כל קהילה ביחס לרעותה. בצד הישראלי גילינו בורות וחוסר עניין ביחס לקהילת יהודי ארצות הברית. הנושא לא נלמד במערכת החינוך, למרות הדברים ששמענו כאן, עדיין לא נלמד, התקשורת כמעט ואינה עוסקת בו, והוא לא נמצא על סדר היום הציבורי והפוליטי בדרך כלל, ובוודאי שלא נתפס כסוגיית ביטחון לאומי. ישראל וענייניה הבוערים נמצאים במרכז מבחינתנו, ויהדות התפוצות הם פריפריה חיצונית ומרוחקת. בציבור הישראלי רווחות מספר תפיסות ביחס ליהודי ארצות הברית. המגזר החרדי ברובו עוין ושולל את היהדות הלא אורתודוקסית. חוגים בציונות הדתית בעיקר מחזיקים ברעיון שלילת הגולה שאפיין את הציונות בראשיתה, ובנוסף הם אינם שבעי רצון מהעמדה הביקורתית של חלק מיהדות ארצות הברית הליברלית כלפי ישראל וממגמות ההתבוללות בקרבה. והציבור החילוני בישראל אמנם פתוח בדרך כלל בגישתו לקהילות בתפוצות וליהדות הפלורליסטית, אבל כאמור הוא אדיש ואינו מגלה בהם עניין. הקהילה היהודית בארצות הברית עוסקת רבות בישראל, אבל גם שם ההיכרות עם החברה הישראלית היא שטחית וחלקית. בניגוד לגישה הישראלית, רוב יהודי ארצות הברית רואים בישראל ובארצות הברית את שני המרכזים החשובים של העם היהודי בעת הנוכחית. גם כיום, חלק ניכר מיהודי ארצות הברית תומכים בישראל ללא תנאי. עם זאת, לרבים נוספים ישנה גם ביקורת ביחס למדיניות של ישראל ולהתנהלותה בתחומים שהצגתי קודם לכן. הבעיה היא שכיום גוברות גם תפיסות של אדישות והתרחקות מישראל, ואף ניכור ועוינות כלפיה. התפיסות האלה רווחות יותר בקרב קהלים צעירים, לא דתיים ובעלי עמדות ליברליות פרוגרסיביות. עכשיו אני רוצה לחזור לנקודת המוצא של דבריי, ולהתייחס ליחסי הקהילות כסוגיית ביטחון לאומי שתעצב במידה רבה את עתידנו כעם, כמדינה וכחברה. כאמור, הקהילות בישראל ובארצות הברית הן עמודי התווך עליהם ניצב העם היהודי בעידן הנוכחי. עמודי התווך הללו הם שני סיפורי הצלחה יוצאי דופן. הם משפיעים הדדית אחד על השני. מערכת היחסים ביניהם הינה עוגן משמעותי להבטחת הביטחון והשגשוג שלהן ושל העם היהודי כולו. בפני שתי הקהילות הללו עומדים בעיקר אתגרים פנימיים כיום שנוגעים בייעודן ובזהותן. ישראל זקוקה לנקודת שיווי משקל נכונה בין הקבוצות שמרכיבות את החברה הישראלית ולאיזון במתח בין יהודית ודמוקרטית. יהודי ארצות הברית עומדים בפני אתגר ההמשכיות והלכידות תוך איזון בין שימור המאפיינים הייחודיים שלהם ובין פתיחות והשתלבות בחברה האמריקאית. כאמור, מערכת היחסים שבין הקהילות סובלת ממגמות גוברות של התרחקות וניכור, החלשות הזיקות, תחושת השייכות והערבות ההדדית. המגמות האלה מושפעות, כפי שאמר מר הרצוג, מתהליכי עומק דמוגרפיים וחברתיים ארוכי טווח מצד אחד, ומשיקולים של פוליטיקה עכשווית בארצות הברית, בישראל ובקרב היהודים שם. אולם המגמות נובעות גם מפערים משמעותיים במאמצים הקיימים לגשר בין הקהילות, ובהם בורות הדדית, פערי היכרות ומודעות ומיעוטם וחולשתם של מנגנוני דו-שיח. עד כאן החדשות הרעות. החדשות הטובות הן שיש מה לעשות כיום כדי לשנות כיוון ולהשפיע על המגמות האלו בטווח הארוך. ובזה אני אסיים. כדי לחולל שינוי מערכתי ביחסים בין ישראל לקהילת יהודי ארצות הברית, נדרש שינוי עמוק ויסודי בתפיסות ובעמדות של ציבורים בנוסף להנהגות. המתווה שאנחנו מציעים מחייב מהלך מתמשך ומשותף של המדינה והחברה בישראל ושל קהילת יהודי ארצות הברית, לבנייה מתמדת של מערכת יחסים איתנה ומתחדשת, כך שכל צד יסייע לרעהו בהתמודדות עם האתגרים בפניהם הוא ניצב. מהלך שכזה צריך לעסוק במספר רבדים, בחינוך, בהקניית ידע, כאמור שני תחומים שיש בהם פער גדול, בהתנסות חווייתית מהסוג של תגלית אבל בשני הכיוונים, מפגשים והיכרות בין אישית, מנגנוני שיח, כאמור עוד פער מאוד גדול היום, ולסיום גיבוש סיפורים משותפים עדכניים ועשייה משותפת למען יעדים רלוונטיים לשתי הקהילות. כדי לממש תהליך ארוך טווח בסדר גודל כזה נדרשת התארגנות לאומית שתתבסס על קואליציה רחבה של ישראל, הקהילות בתפוצות והמוסדות הלאומיים. מטעמה ראוי שתפעל מנהלת לאומית שתעסוק בהכוונה, בתיאום ובהקצאת משאבים למיזמים רלוונטיים. עד כאן על קצה המזלג, אני אעצור כאן ואני רוצה להזמין את השגריר דן שפירו ואת חברי הפאנל כדי להמשיך ולדון בסוגיות היחסים, הפרספקטיבה של יהדות ארצות הברית. דן, שירה, ג'יין, ג'ונתן, בבקשה, הבמה שלכם.
Hello, can you hear? Thank you, Shachar, for presenting the findings of the study. And good afternoon and welcome, everybody. Thank all our panelists here. Shira Rudderman, the Executive Director of the Rudderman Family Foundation, who include strengthening relations between Israel and the American Jewish community as one of its primary focus of work. Jane Eisner, the editor-in-chief of the Forward, leading newspaper publication in the Jewish community. Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, one of the leading organizations in American Jewish life. Grateful for all of you for being here. Brief anecdote, just from my own period of time as U.S. ambassador here. I always met with Jewish organizations and Jewish delegations of every stripe that came to visit, and I of course, knew no other American community that was as committed and dedicated to Israel as the Jewish community. But I was often struck by the profound lack of mutual understanding between those very delegations and the Israelis they came to visit, including some of Israel's most sophisticated, including elites. And then when we would have moments of crisis, the decision to cancel the Kotel Agreement, or when many American Jews supported the Iran nuclear agreement that President Obama signed, although Prime Minister Netanyahu called it an existential threat, we often lacked a common language to bridge those differences. So there's no doubt that there's mutual responsibility to bridge those gaps. And I always made that clear to the American Jewish delegations. You can't just come to Israel and make demands without understanding the Israeli perspective. But in my conversations with Israeli political leaders, I often emphasized, as our study does, the major contributions of the American Jewish community to Israel's national security, including its bilateral relationship with the United States. My argument to them was that, as this study demonstrates, Israel's interests, including its national security, will be served by decisions that strengthen the bonds with the American Jewish community and will be weakened by decisions that harm those relations. The opportunity we have today is to present for an Israeli audience the perspectives of three leaders in and very close observers of the American Jewish community, each with their own very deep ties to Israel, on how these challenges look from an American Jewish perspective, including what steps and policies by the Israeli government and people might contribute to strengthening that pillar of the people-to-people relationship and the bilateral relationship. And so I'm going to start by asking each of our panelists to respond to Shachar's presentation of the research that the INSS has just published with an open question. I'll start with you. And the question for each of you is, are we really facing a crisis between these two communities? How severe is it? How do those challenges look from the perspective of an American Jew in New York or Boston or Chicago or Dallas? And why is that a national security matter for Israel? Shira.
Wow, a lot of good questions. First, I just want to say good afternoon and thank you for having us here. I do want to take the opportunity to thank the INSS team and being such a fantastic partner, and you included. I am an optimist, like Bougie said earlier, from his point of view. I think to use the word crisis makes things look and feel very negative. And when you have a negative perspective, I think it's very hard to engage and come to a conversation in order to find solutions. Number two, it is not the first time that American Jewry did not see eye to eye with Israel. We had other moments in history between the two communities, if we call it two communities, that we had times to see apart, including in the time of the establishment of the State of Israel. So I do think that we have a challenging time that is based, as Shachar presented, on many, many different reasons. Some of them are domestic reasons for the American Jewry that has to do with their communal life, with their being an American and a minority within the country they live in. Aside to that, the changes in the State of Israel, not just regarding our policies. We are not a country in crisis any longer. We're not the common project that we had with American Jewry. We are established, sustainable, strong country that has its own politics, dynamics, and issues. And as a result of it, we see things very different. So now the question is, and I truly think there are two parallel roads happening in this conversation, that at times we try to make it one. If Israel will do X, like in the Kotel, we'll solve the problem. My personal opinion is that it's not working like that. American Jewry has to get together internally and understand and maybe define and decide what is their role in Jewish life with regards to Israel, which is not that simple and clear today. Aside from that, the State of Israel has to stand loud and clear and understand that we have two roles, not one. We are a state for all of our citizens, which has its own political issues. They're not necessarily the same conversation as being the homeland for the Jewish people. What does it mean? Where is the framework for us to work together? Do we have not just a common language, which we're lacking? We don't have a common goal today. We did have a common goal for 70 years. It was to establish the State of Israel and make it work. And I don't think we could do it the same way with that American Jewry. American Jewry is prominent in every aspect of Israeli life, from culture to security to health, and name it. But in the same time, we have to look into the future. And if we don't do that, it will be very hard to come to a conversation and finding solutions. And the last thing I would say, we decided, and I'm not quite sure why, that the solutions that we're trying to reach are in the hardest issues, which is religion. I mean, just imagine for 1 minute to speak about the peace process from starting with Jerusalem. We all know it doesn't work. Let's start first building a common goal, a common language, have a framework, decide who represent the framework, because it's not clear by both sides, and then decide how to find solutions.
Great, and we'll talk about what some of those solutions might be. Jane, same question to you. A crisis, if so, how severe? Is it a crisis, and if so, how severe? How does it look from the perspective of the community that you write about so frequently?
Well, thank you very much. I agree with Shira. It's very difficult to talk about a crisis without really defining that. I would say this. I think that there is a real gap, as we've noted, in understanding each other. And I think that the American Jewish community is undergoing its own changes. You're absolutely right. We have to decide what we want to be and what our role should be in Israel. And I look back at 2018, and particularly the events of October 27th, 2018, when 11 Jews were massacred in Pittsburgh while they were at prayer. And I think we will look back at that moment as a real turning point, not only in the development of the American Jewish identity, but also in our relationship with Israel. I think you saw after that horrific event a real dichotomy between how Israel perceives Jewish hatred and its role to combat that, and what happened in America. You know, the attack in Pittsburgh was not about Israel. It was about the fact that the deranged shooter hated Jews because Jews loved immigrants, because they supported Hayas and the attempts to to bring immigrants to America and to fortify America's pluralistic identity. And what we saw after that in the days following, I think, was just a remarkable display of a new kind of vernacular that is defining the American Jewish experience. You saw people coming together in protest, creating their own rituals using the kriya. The protesters all brought together, were given little pieces of black paper and told to tear it at a certain time. You saw them singing Jewish songs. And all of this was broadcast live on CNN. The Friday after the massacre, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the whole front page was devoted to publishing the Mourner's Kaddish, the first few words in the Hebrew letters. Now, I don't ever remember a time when a newspaper serving the general public did anything like that. And who was the editor of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette? A terrific journalist named David Shribman. He would be the first to say he was a very secular Jew, married to a non-Jew, whose daughter, by the way, is studying to be a Reform rabbi. But in all of those categories, you might look at that family and say, oh, they're lost. They're lost to the Jewish people because they're intermarried, and what do you mean, a Reform woman rabbi? But in fact, they did a remarkable thing by showing the world this is how we mourned. And I think that we're seeing this kind of melding of a social justice mission. I have to say it is coming also at a time when there's a huge majority of American Jews who are truly worried about President Trump, and many, many who are truly worried about the continuing occupation of the Palestinian lands. And I think those two things have really solidified a new approach for American Jews that we need to explain ourselves and do something with, and then work to create much more communication with Israel to strengthen this bond.
Thank you, Jane. Jonathan, I'm going to ask you the same, more or less the same question. Do you see a crisis emerging that is reaching irreparable depths, as some people have described it? Do you see something more fluid, more in keeping with historical trends in this relationship that obviously requires attention? How would you characterize it?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you, Dan, for having me, and thank you, Amos, for once again running what's really a brilliant conference that brings together so many important people and perspectives. It's notable that a conference on national security in Israel is talking about the relationship with the diaspora, which I do think is of strategic concern to both sides. I would agree with my fellow panelists that I don't like the term crisis. I think a challenge is a more appropriate way to think about this, but there absolutely are real issues that need to be addressed. I mean, on the one hand, I looked at that survey and thought, here are two communities who are really developing their own sense of identity. And much as the way that Shachar presented it, you know, I think the Jewish Israeli community is more confident, more security-minded, diverse in its own way, increasingly religious. And the American Jewish community is secure in its own way, although not necessarily historically security-minded, less religious, and more pluralistic in many regards. So I do think that you have communities which maybe, as Shira said, on a parallel track, but they see the world differently. I think what's important to note is, as we move forward, Pittsburgh was a watershed. And so the idea that the younger generation is lost, I deeply disagree with that. They may manifest their Judaism differently. They may pray with their feet more than they pray in shul. But they are absolutely acting on deeply held Jewish values and Jewish impulses. Now, I do think it's critical that we get our arms around how our two communities can support each other more effectively. What we don't need in Israel, and it's so interesting because I heard this so often when I took this job at ADL, Israelis don't like it when Americans come and lecture them. Americans don't like it when Israelis come to America and lecture us. Lecturing us after Pittsburgh and telling us that we were exaggerating the instances of anti-Semitism, as literally an Israeli minister told me. Not helpful. Telling us that, again, many of American Jews are lost because they're intermarrying or because their degree of practice isn't recognized by the rabbinate here. Not helpful. So I have great faith in American Judaism and the American Jews. We are entrepreneurial, we are inventive, we will continue to interpret the faith in a way that might not follow the halakhical interpretations of some members of the rabbinate, but it will be vibrant, it will be dynamic, and it will be deeply Jewish.
Shira, the Rudderman Foundation has, as I mentioned, made strengthening the relationship between American Jews and Israel one of its primary areas of focus. Some people here may not be familiar with some of those initiatives, if you could relate to them briefly, but also I'm interested in what the Israeli government, what your expectations or requests or desires of the Israeli government and people's participation in the efforts that the Rudderman Foundation, sort of on behalf of the American Jewish community, are putting forward are to make this effort successful.
So, is it working? Before I answer this question, I just want to maybe echo a couple things that Jonnathan said, which I think maybe relate to, the general, why is it a national security matter? It's, I think it's crucial that we have this conversation in this setting and not in other settings, because if we lose each other, if we see it as a challenge or a crisis, if we agree or disagree on the solutions, but at the end of the day, if we lose each other because we couldn't find a common language or because we could not be respectful enough and caring enough to understand the challenges, I think this is, I don't want to say almost the end of us because I'm an optimistic person, but this will be a point that it will be hard to recover. So if we don't see it in eyes of a national security, because this is not just the state of Israel, this is the homeland of the Jewish people, meaning that no matter what will be the challenge that Jews around the world will have, and no matter what successful life they would have, Israel will always be connected to their story and their identity. So I do think it is crucial for us as a state, as people, to understand why is it needed and necessary and our responsibility to come to the table, to find solutions, and of course the government, and of course the political leaders are part of it. Bushi said before, and I could not agree more than that, this has to be part of their political view. We have to demand, as Israelis and as American Jewry, that no political, movement or party can exclude the conversation. What will be your perspective, not on pluralism, because this is too personal, on a relationship, what you're going to do to understand that you represent Jewish people in many settings, and therefore, what will be the language that we agree together. And I also think it's our responsibility to make the framework to where, when you're not an Israeli citizen, you maybe cannot have a full share in some decisions. And maybe it will be painful to make this decision, but we have to, because part of the challenge that Jonnathan raised is that we don't have boundaries. So when American Jewry agree or disagree with America, they make it with Israel, they make it loud and clear, and it's not always clear to the state of Israel what is the role in this particular situation. And I think it caused more tension and more division between us versus unity or respect or understanding. The last thing I would say, and I'm going to quickly answer your question, that, and I am going to be a bit critical, although I am an American myself. I split my life, live in Boston, raise American kids, married to an American. I would say that one of the things I sense that is lacking in our Jewish communities is to be self-critical a little bit too. We are very good to criticize Israel when it comes to any issue. We're not that good to criticize ourselves, meaning the fact that we're not unified, the fact that we do not necessarily cooperate with each other, the fact that we are very divisive or divided today on any issue that American Jewry, is dealing with. And I think if the State of Israel has to deal with this division, of course they'll take advantage. Because each time a different community, a different leader, a different organization challenge the State of Israel. So they respond by personal relationship, personal knowledge, and not necessarily responsibility. So the Rudderman Family Foundation did recognize this gap and the need. So what we decided to do is to educate, as you heard, to educate our leaders. We take once a year a mission of, members of Knesset, journalists, to come and face and to listen, not to talk, not to lecture, not to criticize, literally for a week of learning American Jewry, all issues, all voices, all, opportunities that we can afford to, we can share with them. The other thing we do, we educate Israelis through the Haifa University as a master's degree. We have a caucus in the Knesset. We're thinking, we do campaigns to educate, create the bonding, because, sharing is caring, and caring means to take actions.
Thank you. Those initiatives are all extremely impactful for anybody who has taken part in them, as I had the pleasure to do at the University of Haifa. Jane, one of the pillars of the American Jewish community support for Israel and American support more broadly has been that it crosses many communal lines. It's bipartisan, it's interdenominational, it has broad institutional support. That's getting harder. Among the reasons President Obama, I recall, was concerned about the Prime Minister's speech in the Knesset, in the Congress in 2015 about the Iran deal was because it might inflame partisan divisions around the State of Israel. I think we've seen more and more of that in the era of Trump, and there are things happening in my own party that raise concern for me about that. And of course, the pendulum is going to swing both ways. In that context, what do Israelis need to understand about the evolutions in the American Jewish community? Political, but also religious, cultural. What do we? You've referred to those evolutions, and what sort of all sides need to do to try to maintain that broad identification as those evolutions unfold.
Well, thank you. I think you're right to pinpoint Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech to Congress in 2015. That was a source of great anxiety for American Jews. Remember, the American Jewish voter overwhelmingly supported President Obama twice. This was a signature policy for him, and I think the fact that it was perceived that the Prime Minister went around the White House to speak to Congress in a very belligerent tone really made American Jews feel like they had to choose. They had to choose between the president that they really supported and the State of Israel, which they really supported. And that level of anxiety, I think, has not gone away. It's gotten more pronounced because of the close relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. And I think you've seen this movement away from Israel feeling like there was a bipartisan consensus. And I think it's very hard, especially to tell younger people who very much have their own sense of identity, very fluid identity, that they have to support a government that they might not necessarily agree with just because. I don't think that's going to work anymore. And so I think that there needs to be much more of a recognition that most American Jews feel very Jewish, but also feel very American. And that means feeling like a minority in a very large country in which other minorities are being discriminated against even more so than ours than we are. I think it means that values of tolerance and pluralism are really important. There were a series of polls that the Pew Research Center did, both of American Jews and of Israeli Jews, and then looked at the differences in their responses. And it was really fascinating. The vast majority of American Jews think that to be Jewish means to live a moral and ethical life. The vast majority of American Jews think that to be Jewish means to working for social justice and equality. And when you asked Israeli Jews those questions, it was a big minority. There's a big gap between what it means to feel Jewish in America for most Jews. And I think Israelis may not understand that because the current administration is basically dominated by what we would say modern Orthodox Jews, both within the president's family and his cabinet. And that is an important segment of the American Jewish population, but a very small one, very small. And so we have the political representatives of the United States interacting with the state of Israel, but the ones from the United States only represent, in many ways, a minority of American Jews. So I think we really need to have a better understanding and respect for the way American Jews interact with America at large, and then through that, I hope, be able to have a much more honest dialogue about Israel.
Thank you. Jonathan, you alluded, both you and Jane alluded to the massacre in Pittsburgh and the Tree of Life Synagogue, and you talked about the Israeli government's reaction to that. In fact, just I think this week, the Diaspora Ministry has put out some statistics that suggest that, in fact, at least at the moment, the right-wing anti-Semitism is the source of the main violence, at least that Jews have experienced. At the same time, there is a left-wing phenomenon of anti-Semitism, and it sometimes takes expression through the BDS movement. How are those events affecting the relationships between the two communities, and what can Israel do differently or better? How might they respond to those challenges in ways that strengthen the bonds?
Okay, so I'll respond to the question. I do want to respond a little bit to what Jane talked about, though. I will say this, I'm sitting up here next to Dan, and I am, like Dan, I don't want to speak for you, but I am very proud of my public service in the Obama administration.
You can speak for me.
Okay, there you go. Very proud. But I disagree with Jane with the presumption that Bibi's speech before Congress created a situation in which American Jews felt that they had to choose. Because I was outside running the ADL, and I was watching surrogates who were arguing on behalf of the Iran deal, our friends from Nyack and other places, who said, you have to choose. You are for the deal or you are for war. That was what they said. So I don't think it's fair to say that American Jews felt like they had to choose. The rhetoric on those who were arguing for the deal, and that's something Dan and I might not have agreed on, was saying I was a warmonger because I was opposed to the deal. So I just want to clarify that. I don't think it's fair to say that Jews felt like we had to choose. We were being told, and I can give you the quotes from the press from that time, from your paper, by the way, the Forward. And I think that's really important to note. So politics today are very fraught in the US and very polarized, and people are really on edge. And I think the situation in Pittsburgh and the situation with anti-Semitism calls that up, and it's sort of implicit in your question. So indeed at the ADL, we fight anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. Indeed at the ADL, we saw a 57% increase in anti-Semitic attitudes, incidents in 2017. Acts of harassment, vandalism, and violence. And then in 2018, we just released a report last week that looked at, we do this every year, extremism and murders. And extremist-related murders in the US in 2018 were overwhelmingly committed by people espousing an extreme right-wing ideology. That's not my opinion, that's sort of the facts. White supremacists, neo-Nazis, and their ilk. And of those murders, like 34% were Jews. We're 2% of the population, yet we were disproportionately represented in number of deaths at the hands of extremists in 2018. So anti-Semitism, in terms of attitudes, has been at about 10 to 15% of the population in the US for some time. So attitudes are low. When ADL started tracking attitudes back in the 60s, it was close to 30%. Now it's down 10 to 15. So that's really the good news. The bad news is that extremists feel emboldened, and they're acting out more and more. and they are vandalizing and assaulting and all of this. And indeed, we have seen the emboldenment of right-wing extremism as a real threat. Now, here's the thing. Right-wing extremists aren't American conservatives in any traditional sense, any more than left-wing radicals represent the liberal establishment in the US. So I think we need to keep in mind that these extremists don't speak for the majority of people from that side of the political spectrum. We need to keep in mind that extremists are about ideology, not about political party. And we need to realize that neither side of the spectrum has a monopoly on morality. So some people on the left point to the right, some people on the right point to the left. As far as I see it, extremism of any form is a problem. So then the question becomes, what can the Israeli government do to help? Help the US, help American Jews to combat anti-Semitism. I would say there are probably a couple things. So number one, don't lecture, but listen. Right? Don't lecture us, but listen. Coming to the United States and talking to American Jews and trying to understand how can they help with issues of communal security? How can they help organizations like the ADL, which already monitors social media? So listen to what we need rather than lecturing. And secondly, I think something that's really important is embracing the diversity and the pluralism of American Jews. Don't just show up for a funeral. I mean, let me step back. For Israeli elected officials, I mean specifically the political leadership, don't just show up for a funeral or an AIPAC conference. Show up at a Reform synagogue and give a drash. Show up for a communal seder, right, and talk about what that means in a modern context. Find ways to engage with American Jews where they are and embrace all of them, regardless of how they vote or how they pray or who they love, regardless of domestic politics over here. That would send a very powerful message, I think, to our community.
Thank you. We just have a couple of minutes left. If anybody wants to respond to something they've heard from another panelist, that's fine. But I would just ask, sort of for kind of closing remarks, you know, we are in this very polarized era of politics. There's no question that you have this very clear division between Israeli attitudes about Obama and Trump and American Jewish attitudes about Obama and Trump. Roughly 2/3 of American Jews voted for Obama, don't support Trump, and Israelis have, generally speaking, the reverse attitudes about them. How much is that a symptom of this divide that we're dealing with? How much is it a cause of it? And how does the Israeli government need to think about how to navigate its relations between a U.S. government, whoever it is, it has to have the best possible relationships with, and this American Jewish community, which remains a critical pillar and part of one people? I'll throw that to whoever would like to take that. Shira.
So, as we said that we have two parallel roads that are happening in the same time, it will be true to the same point that you just described. You know, American Jewry, and I would say the leadership of the State of Israel has two ways to look at the relationship. One is what's happening between Jerusalem to Washington, which is extremely important, and American Jewry has a role in this particular relationship, which is different than their relationship with the State of Israel. And I think to maybe from our end to understand the contribution, the necessity of us as a state having such a strong, powerful Jewish community that has the ability, regardless who the president is, to be part and to be included is something that we cannot take for granted and do nothing other than to support. I just want to say that it's hard just to listen, because one difference we have between us, and this is something that maybe because of our equal size, we tend to forget, because of the successful Jewish community in terms of wealth and being assimilated part, not religiously, more from a nationality part in the United States, makes us forget that we are a state. We're not a community. We are not independent to make just a decision that is based on philanthropy, money, or voluntarily choices of people. And therefore, the dynamic is very different. And as a result of it, we at times feel the need, maybe what American Jewry experiences to lecture is more to own the responsibility. I'll conclude by saying that, you know, the responsibility is on the two of us. We cannot expect any side to be more responsible. We have to, at times, put our ego aside, and there is ego on both sides of the aisle, to put aside and to understand that our peoplehood and our state and our relationship is beyond the moment.
Okay.
You know, I'm a journalist, so I'm not here to sort of offer policy prescriptions. For me, I think about this almost personally. I look at Israeli culture as separate from the political and see this incredibly vibrant entrepreneurial country, a country that really seems to value family and family life. You know, where even my most secular Israeli friends will gather with their children on a Friday night no matter what. Believe me, this doesn't happen in America. I wish it would more. And I think that American Jews can learn so much about the kind of society that Israel is creating. And similarly, I think Israeli Jews can learn from American Jews about how to live with people who aren't like you, who don't look like you, who may worship differently and look at the world differently. And we've gotten good at that over the centuries. And I think that that is a value too. So perhaps what we can try to do is just identify these aspects of our social and cultural life that really enhance us as human beings and enhance us as Jews, and recognize that we actually can learn from each other at that very, very basic level.
Jonathan.
I think both Shira and Jane have offered wonderfully. I mean, I really like what they both had to say. So I don't have that much more to add. I mean, I'm very optimistic. I mean, we live in this moment of, you know, Taglit and Shluchim and Fauda and Gal Gadot, and like there's more Israeli imports to the U or exports to the U.S., cultural and people and what than we've ever seen before. And in this globalized world, I mean, I feel very confident about the abilities of our Jewish community in the U.S. to understand Israeli identity and for Israelis to understand American Jewish identity. So although there are some challenges, I mean, I'm actually very hopeful about what the future portends.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists. I think I'll also close on an optimistic note by saying that while there's no question that I think, as we heard from Bougie, and as this panel represents, the focus that this issue needs, both within the American Jewish community leadership and I think the rank and file, and within Israel, is now coming to the fore, and there are some new initiatives designed to address how to keep these communities close together. But the fact that it can now be established also as a national security issue for the state of Israel, thanks to this study, thanks to the work of INSS, I hope we'll keep it very prominent in the discussions at that level of Israeli national security decision makers. And INSS, I'm very confident, will continue its work in that regard as well. So thank you, everybody.